All right, greetings, ladies, gents. Today is Monday, February 8th, 2021. My name is Timothy Halloran. I am a message delivery mailman of sorts. In these videos, we talk about the times. What somewhat sets me apart from the other astrologers I see out there in YouTube land is I'm very much speaking to you all from my own personal, subjective, emotional, lived experience. And so in my own style, flavor, and tone, I'm going to speak to this time. I'm going to speak to the moments, the experience of this time, and I will get into some of the more technical, astrological, airy, heady details towards the end of this video. So, where can I even begin? I feel against the backdrop of what astrologers are always saying, it may be pointless to say that this is an awfully poignant time. This is incredibly intense. It's incredibly overwhelming. There is so much to process, and there are so many very, very big changes taking place in our personal experience on our planet, and this is beginning this year of 2021. Okay. We are in between paradigms. What has been sustained in the past cannot be sustained now into the future. We have found ourselves in a world and a societal culture and situation, as well as personal structures and circumstance, that is rotten to the very core. This is not a world that is puttering along. The situation is not fine. This is not a matter of perspective or looking at things the right or wrong way. This is not an issue of the positive or negative perspective. This is about core unmet needs. This is about the suffering of our world and planet. This is about the phenomenon of trauma and PTSD. This results from unmet needs. We live in a world where we are all like fish in water to complex PTSD. Complex PTSD results from core missing needs that we may or may not even recognize are core missing needs due to these needs not having existed throughout our life and experience. This is about seeing the world is full of suffering, that we are authentically suffering, that others are authentically suffering. This is the truth. And it is not okay. We are not okay. The seers, the feelers, the helpers are in pain. They see there is no justice in this world. The rich and entitled shaming and lecturing the poor and needy is what we call justice in our world. They get what they deserve is the phrase most uttered from the lips of evil doers. Is it people getting what they deserve, as in we need to inflict more punishment? Or is it a situation of people lacking what they have essentially needed from the very get-go? You see, the New Age religious and spiritual movements are notorious for this type of bias and forceful approach to living a so-called happy life. And what we're sold is, of course, oh yes, you can, oh yes, you can, oh yes, you can, oh yes, you can. You can create that, you can live that, you are in charge of your reality, you create your own reality. What if I told you that this false notion of happiness and self-contentment is only a deception in real life and the real world? Do we honestly believe that we came here for a vacation life? Here, this planet, at this time? You think false hope and faking out others with fake support, fake optimism, and fake love is really loving? Actually caring? Actually helpful? I think not. The American dream, capitalism, and the byproduct of the New Age movement is a deception. That you should have a positively manifested life to your perfect ideal dream world, your perfect family, your perfect home by now is bait given by oligarchs to tax the needy with an additional charge for the cost of regular snake oil. Truth is, currently, the wisdom is not in the people. Currently, the wisdom is not in the people. We are a self-deluding mass. until now. If you are not tortuously frustrated by your experience of life or the world that you're living in, then I would say you are not in touch. Saturn is squaring Uranus for the first time these weeks. There will be a retrograde pass in June and then a completing pass December 24th at the end of this year. This is one of the most tense and charged periods of our lifetime. The phrase divine discontent is the phrase I affectionately regard to Aquarius and Uranus. That is our fuel for the times, folks. We were born during a patriarchal period at the end of a Pisces age. Do we actually see where it is that we're coming from? We are crawling out of dark ages. We are crawling out of the Victorian era. We have become so lost and so far forgotten from our actual human heritage and actual roots. We have been insane for generations and generations, thousands and thousands of years. It is a hell planet. It is a hell realm if you actually understand mass time, where we've come from and where we are crawling out of. As a species, we are suffering from a mass hypnotic mind control, as well as a controlled environment, like a controlled experimental drug experiment, where there's mind control. That's the American dream. That, in many respects, is the New Age movement and the snake oils that these spiritual religious movements sell. Ableism. Not caring, not compassion, not real hope. The false hope that attempts to overlook and bypass the core unmet needs. These are not needs that we meditate ourselves into having. These are not needs that we discover through our guides or angels. These are not needs that we pray or wish away. We have to understand what these needs are. We have to understand what we have not been given from our lost, deranged world, society, parents, prior generations, in order to get back towards what we need via the pain, the suffering, and the inner flame of divine discontent. This, my friends, my soul family, is your gift and blessing, being a teacher and a healer on this planet at this time, or else you are not a teacher or a healer. You are a fraud. If you do not have the inner passion of divine discontent that sees all of the suffering in the world via core unmet needs. No, it's not people possessing the wrong belief. It's not people having not joined the cult or clicked their heels together and positively manifested this or that. That's what the rich, spoiled, and entitled from their ivory towers project upon the poor, needy, and suffering to bypass their role to be helpers. Where we use the pain, the suffering of our inner flame, we use our divine discontent because we do not have a choice but to serve, but to help, being driven by pain and suffering. That's the role of a true healer teacher. We are not this fucking fake bullshit happiness. My fullest honor and respect to my fellow complainers for calling it for what it actually is. Thank you. I support you. We are in this together. You are truth tellers, not complainers. There is a myth that we're all taught, being born in this dark age of Pisces, at the end of a patriarchal period. This myth is the Garden of Eden. And in the Garden of Eden, all is perfect, all is wonderful. There are fruits, there is pleasure, and of course there is Adam and Eve living in this idealistic truth until the snake, that snake bursts the bubble with the knowledge of good and evil. And the snake says, this is not an ideal paradise that you were born into. This is a deception. This is a delusion. We have formed a delusive bubble that is a controlled environment. And it's not real. It's not real life. We are all prisoners of this controlled environment. We are hypnotically owned by this old culture, this old reality that's patriarchal. It hates the divine feminine, the world, the culture, the bosses, the teachers that we've known in the past. They have been our oppressors. And it's the snake that liberates Adam and Eve from the deception of the garden. This is the Gnostic understanding of the Garden of Eden and mythology. Okay, Lucifer, the snake, is the representation of divine feminine wisdom. So thank you to my fellow snakes and complainers for being representations of the divine feminine out there in the world. I have known so-called peers and friends to shame you, to put you down for being patriarchal oppressors when they become exposed, for being the creepy rapists that they are. They call those that expose them snakes. I applaud the snakes, my fellow representations of the divine feminine in a world that oppresses you. We have to wake up the world via our own oppression, being made out of the divine feminine and then shown disrespect, thrown under the bus, having our core unmet needs shit upon, and then told that it's our problem and that we are the ones responsible, we are the ones to fix it. When in fact there are people that are being abused by tyrants, by patriarchs, by racists. These are the people that are called snakes. No, you are the representations of the divine feminine, and your passion, your anger, your frustration is calling attention to the truth. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being a complainer in a world that is full of shit. False hope, false happiness, and lemmings leading other lemmings off of the cliff face. Ableists, oligarchs, spoiled fat patriarchs making judgments as to why real human beings are having the life that they have in the real world from their ivory tower. We need no such authorities. We need no such teachers. And I hope that we are identifying these frauds to liberate ourselves from the chains of oppression. We are the ones to liberate ourselves from the chains of oppression via our own felt experience of pain, suffering, frustration, and this turns into a passion, which is a creative force that breaks out of the old, creates the new. That's what we're doing here together. The true snakes are the wisdom keepers of the divine feminine, doing the apparently unthinkable or even outrageous in order to bring in, initiate truth, and improve, exposing what no longer works. The old world does not work. The old world says that it's fine. The old world says, well, we'll make it work. The old world says, you can make it work. You have enough. Well, I'm going to tell you what. We don't have enough to make it work. We aren't able to continue in the old way. It's not enough. Something has to change. There are core unmet needs. Here's the voice of reality. This is where we stand in time. This is not a believe the right thing, snap your fingers, click your heels together, and the UFOs land. This is us waiting for us to recognize that we've been living in a hellscape, that we've created a false sanctuary in that hellscape, and now that false sanctuary is the next oppressive, imprisoning environment. It's the unmet needs that will necessarily spur the new directions, the collaborations, the communities that don't currently exist. These things will form by us taking charge and not waiting for the world to recognize what we need and is missing, not waiting for other people to introduce perspectives that's going to change everything. No, it's time. It's not going to take care of itself. It's not going to go away over time. This is the wake up. This is about recognizing that we may be in between that hard space and a rock. And that's the necessary tension, the necessary flame to squeeze us out, to push us out, or to push us into a necessary breakdown. To recognize that it does not have to be the way that we've lived before. It does not have to be remaining frozen in these oppressive, imprisoning patterns. Where I am telling you, we've all suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder in various ways in this world, in this period, in this time. Each and every one of us, we're either awake and aware of it, or we're becoming awake and aware of it. That's the world in which we live. We're waking up to this post-traumatic condition, okay? So the world's changing. There is this new perspective that's coming that sees from a higher vantage point what has worked, what is no longer working, okay? So here I'll mention some astrology, all right? Mercury stationed retrograde in Aquarius last week. Mercury will station direct in Aquarius mid-February. There is a tremendous digestion of old patterns and new patterns. And there's this reverberation going on back and forth. And I believe that this is a part of the healing of these old trauma patterns, right? It's like we are all PTSD, so we all have unmet needs in highly unique ways. And this is what we're recognizing. Hey, the world and the society and our parents and teachers did not really recognize these things in the past. We did not recognize the full diversity and individuality of human expression, which is why we are involved in this evolutionary work as individuals at this time. This is our service back to the collective. Honor your uniqueness. It's not just food, water, and shelter that we're missing. That was the old world. Hey, once you got food, water, and shelter, you're taken care of. No, there are more needs to survive in a human body. We do need connection. We do need community. We do need physical touch. I will tell you, having been raised in a male body, I have been consistently told and taught that these are not needs that I have, especially the need for touch and emotional care. It's just like, no, you don't need that. Pick yourself up from your bootstraps from the inside out. And then we are literally, using myself as an example, starved. We are like a fish out of water flopping around, and we start to have PTSD response. So I'm going to read actually from my social media here. And I do have Facebook, Rasalila Healing. I have Instagram, Rasalila Healing, and I am making updates and posts more so than I put on YouTube if you'd like to stay up to date. Okay, first I'm going to talk about the trauma signature. Now, we have a new moon in Aquarius coming up on Thursday as well. So we're right now in the old moon of Capricorn, okay? The last new moon a month ago began in Capricorn, conjunct Pluto. Now that's one of the indicators that this last lunar cycle, end of January through beginning of, first couple weeks of Feb, is this incredibly charged, thick, dense, intense, cathartic. It's a breaking down. It's a death and a rebirth. It's an incredibly empowering lunar cycle. But I've been talking to so many folks, and it's very challenging. We've been pushed to our limits. We've been seeing again what we have and what we need via these very severe and intense experiences. So again, this brings up an overall theme of trauma and healing PTSD. We have the moon's nodes aligning with the nodes of Uranus. I'm very much going to be continuing to talk about this. This is a huge transit that not many astrologers know about because unfortunately not many astrologers or not enough astrologers look at planetary nodes. So the south node of the moon is conjoining the south node of Uranus these coming weeks, and the north node of the moon will join the north node of Uranus in April. This entire period, there's this theme of timeline jumping, going from the past to the future, where we've experienced trauma, how that has formed coping mechanisms, and how those coping mechanisms can be connected to a pattern of dissociation, leaving our body, leaving our experience. This is what trauma creates, is dissociation, which is not really a problem. It's how we survive very, very intense or severe experiences without losing our actual mind by being overwhelmed with intensity. The lunar nodes aligned with the nodes of Uranus brings up a tremendously charged period of time. It is a period where a doorway is open to the dimension of non-linear time. This is Uranus. Where it may seem as though we are in an intersection of timelines, and therefore there are different coexisting or even paradoxical possibilities existing all at once. This also brings the theme of trauma to light, which, as we may end up discovering at some point in the future, is a natural vehicle for the healing and evolution of consciousness. How we access the dimension of nonlinear time, Uranus, how we have accessed dissociative states before, how we may access the same state or dimension for the healing of PTSD or accessing certain perspectives or information from that higher vantage point may be on the menu these weeks. Now, in order to heal trauma, there's very often, and maybe even always, a necessary retraumatization. The key to healing trauma, and this is the bottom line, and this is what I witness, the major core unmet need in our world, culture, society, is we need supportive people, safe environments to experience subtle triggers, which catalyze subtle re-traumatization in order to follow that trail of breadcrumbs back inside to that core original trauma, and in a loving, supportive group and environment that brings healing awareness to the trauma, that previously dissociated, separated part of ourself via the trauma can come back to ourself via the support, the love, the supportive environment of the present. Okay, so that's the major core need, especially at this time. What shocks our awareness, what has caused the experience of shock or coping with fundamental lack of essential needs that led to dissociation or forming invisible worlds, beings, or methods developed to cope with and survive extreme experiences. That's what can be up these weeks. Since consciousness has created such dynamics for its own protection in the past, we may be exploring what these dynamics are, how they formed, how we can use them for the benefit of any group or individual, or to our own detriment, depending on how aligned such dynamics are with the laws of nature and the actual functioning in the real world through time. So when we experience PTSD, when we experience trauma, that is, dissociation is the natural consequence. When we're in an experience that's too overwhelming for our body and nervous system to handle, our consciousness separates. This is why people look at their body from the ceiling, or they go into an objectification. This is all Aquarius phenomenon, by the way. The splitting apart of consciousness, aka isolation, as well as the interconnection of consciousness, aka community, tribe, it's all in Aquarius. That's where we are as a species in this particular moment of time. These separate, disassociated, alternative worlds outside of time, the beings of the future, the extraterrestrials, the angels that we form a connection with through the experience of trauma. There may be something real, valid, and valuable in those experiences, but if they are not connected with our body, our timeline, what's going on in the present, it may be more hallucination or delusion or having our consciousness fragmented. So we're doing this weaving where there's been splitting apart of consciousness, how we can bring those parts back. PTSD forms our sexual fetishes. PTSD forms our unconscious dynamics, why we have the attractions, the repulsions that we do, the symbols, the metaphors that we resonate with. It can all be connected to this deeper healing process. And again, this is all a part of an evolutionary journey as well. Trauma creates patterns and cycles. It is easy to recreate traumatic experience via the pain and suffering of it coming around again from the past. The classic example of this, Aquarius, is isolation, where the human who has experienced pain due to contact with other humans develops mistrust and withdrawing from other people. It is not just the withdrawing from other people due to a PTSD response. There is also group dynamic. The universe sets up these experiences for subtle retraumatization to occur. So what's important is that there is a hidden level where there is this biological response. The universe sets us up to encounter these patterns time and time again, and that can be very painful. It can be very easy to take that subjectively, personally, or think that we're just being tortured or the universe is just out there to punish us with these redundant patterns. What allows for the recognition, the healing that wants to naturally happen through the ripples and waves coming from past traumas is the supportive environment and people that willfully desires to go into, to re-experience, to remember, explore, and therefore bring light and understand the pain and darkness of what specifically those original traumas were. This is a process. When we've had core traumas that were too severe for us to process at the time, we form memory blocks. People form memory blocks of entire years or decades of their life. So there's this gradual remembering of what these core traumas were. Again, I see a lot of the ableists and the delusional New Agers haven't even begun this process. It's too scary. It's too intense for them, which is why they remain in this dimension of disassociation, selling snake oil, like positively manifest this or that, and everything works out for you, and your guides make everything magically happen. And this is a disconnection from the real world and what takes place in this physical dimension. So we create fractals. Trauma is like the kernel of a fractal, a self-reflecting form. It evolves and blossoms into a mystic and creative potential as the pattern unfolds, as we bring this healing awareness into the kernel of the pattern. This happens much like watering a rose. We allow for space, love, empathy, understanding, and support to enter into the fractal, to reach the seed of the rose, the roots of the plant, and heal from the deepest core by embracing the trauma, how it is now a part of ourselves. Now it can be used for good and healing for ourselves and others in ways that were not possible before. This is the doorway that's opening. This is why we have to go down into the pain and the suffering before going back up into the future, the healing, the potential. This weaving between the lowest and the low and the highest of the high, this is what all authentic healers do. Period. There's no if, and, or buts. There's nobody staying up there in their heaven realm and doing powerful healing work without going to the lowest of the low. Only charlatans and frauds who bullshit and fake other people into becoming their next codependents and cults and highly manipulative environments fall for that bait. It's only the people that have experienced traumas themselves, have gone to the bottom of the barrel, know what pain and suffering. These are the only people that can bring healing, compassion, and love to those that suffer. Only they can create the truly supportive spaces filled with authentic understanding and empathy. We need authentic understanding and empathy, not people saying, oh yeah, I'm your family, oh yeah, I'm your partner because of what you do for me, because of the role that you hold for me. That's not supporting an individual. We support individuals by going into their hell realms, period. And if that's too much for us to do, we don't really love that person enough to be there for them, and we shouldn't be faking or bullshitting anything else. That's called being an honest human being with limits. We're all allowed to have limits. When people pretend that they're some fucking savior and they don't do anything, they're not even being honest human beings. So no, we don't have to save and rescue other people, but love drives us to go into the hellscapes of those we love and care for. That's how healing happens, period. All this other surface level bullshit, it's people too narcissistic to admit they're narcissists, getting whatever they need to get theirs, sex, love, attention, whatever the fuck it is. Okay. Knew this one was going to be exciting. There's one more dynamic I need to talk about. This was the moon's nodes being squared to Neptune. This was exact at the end of January, but boy, I gotta say, we're still really living this dynamic. Okay, so the moon's nodes in the Gemini-Sagittarius polarity and squaring Neptune brings up an otherworldly quality to the point where now it's challenging to see and discern what is real and what is fantasy. It also brings a very visceral sensation of the existential void. Pulls us into a vacuum of space, pointlessness, identity disintegration. Who are we? What's the point of this? Does this even matter if we don't find something to plug that feeling of void, that feeling of emptiness? Yet it also comes bearing a paradoxical awareness with a terrifying question of whether so much of what we grab onto to fill the hole is just another hole. Is it even possible for us to live our dreams? Or is it just another pitfall? The transit forces us to explore the overall meaning and interconnectivity of all things. It is an opportunity for us to develop new or higher meaning at the same time as we cut away from old infatuations, distractions, deceptions, false hope, American dreams. They kept us perplexed. They kept us distracted along the path to our deeper, truer goals. Can we trust? What determines that which we trust? That's a core question. What determines that which we trust? What determines that which we are open or closed to? Is that serving us? Is that healthy? Can we accept there is a bigger picture even if we cannot see it? To tune into the real Tao, to find the song of God's whisper and take a thread of it, to get a tether of it, to catch a glimpse of it. It's all here and gone again with that mystical, otherworldly dimension of Neptune. Where we feel that void, again, we can go down, we can explore what's missing, and we can find newer, healthier, more authentic ways of feeling full, feeling connected to something bigger than just ourselves. This is also the area of mastery where we interconnect our life, everything that we've suffered, all the injustices that we've had put onto us by others and the world. That's the magical point of transmutation, where that becomes our story, our teaching, our medicine, our healing that we get to depart to others as we are at the same time being the redeemers for ourselves. Folks, this struggle for authentic connection and community is one of my most heartfelt passions and pains throughout this life so far, I have been forced to create an online community to have a sense of the others out there. I also want to mention, I've been pushed to my absolute limit this last moon cycle, this last year. It's unbelievable. At the same time, and this doesn't make sense to me, I have felt more love from highly invisible dimensions. I feel some of you out there. It's coming back to me, sometimes in ways I don't understand, and that's new. And I have to thank you, those out there reflecting whatever you have, reflecting back. Just being a person out there, letting you know that you exist. Thank you so much. That support, that reflection, even just letting you know that you exist out there is what I am dependent on in this particular time, to wake up in the morning, to keep going, to keep food going into my body. But I am at the same time so passionate to improve things. It's not enough. It's not good enough. We need better community. We need better intimacy. We need better connection. And I'm going to continue to try to pave this forward this next year for my own personal community. Trying to find folks here in Asheville, if there are any local folks around here interested in having things to show and tell, I would love to meet and know you. And if you're suffering from any of this disconnection yourself, feel free to join. Right now it's on Patreon. I'm probably going to get off of the Patreon platform soon. But I am going to continue the online community. I have an online chat room. People are sharing their experiences. People are supporting one another. I've heard from my community, people are really going through it, really getting challenged this last lunar cycle. So you are not alone. There is support out there. You are safe and invited to share your story. And again, you are more than safe and invited to complain. Complain your ass off about your life, your experience, what you've had. And if other people don't like it, I'll let you know that I do. And I know I have a growing group of authentic circles that appreciate you for honestly sharing your real life and experience. That way we can get into it together. And that way we can love and support one another through this important phase and chapter of collective healing. My astro school is going to continue. That's going to continue to grow. If you want to learn astrology, you absolutely can. And if you just want to connect and show and tell, I look forward to connecting and sharing with like minds down the line. And as always, my heart goes out to each and every one of you. You are God's going into your own hell realm and breaking free and redeeming yourself. It's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing. It's an inspiring thing for us to all share in this mutual reflection and this mutual recognition. So as always, do take care. Wishing you all the very best.